She moved through the hospital before dawn the way some people move through water. Quiet. Careful not to disturb anything that might already be breaking. Her shoes made no sound on the polished floors, rubber soles softened by years of walking these halls. The badge on her chest said Nurse, Temporary, printed in thin black letters that had begun to peel at the corners. She never fixed it. Temporary felt accurate. Everything did. Mara Hayes began each shift the same way. She washed her hands for exactly 30 seconds, warm water, then cold. She counted her breaths while she dried them. She checked the overnight charts in silence, lips pressed together, eyes moving fast but gentle. Pain levels. Med times. Notes written by residents who still believed distance was professionalism. She read past their detachment and saw what was actually there. Fear. Exhaustion. People holding on to other people who might not make it. Room 312 smelled like antiseptic and oranges. The old man inside liked oranges because they reminded him of a sister who had died young. He told her that on her second week. On her third, he forgot her name. On her fifth, he forgot the sister. Mara peeled the orange slowly, careful not to spray the juice. She fed him one slice at a time, waited for him to chew. When he choked, she held his hand and whispered nothing. Just air. Just presence. No one noticed her much. That was the point. She kept her head down, shoulders slightly rounded, hair pulled back tight enough to ache. She never stayed long in one place. 2 months here. 3 weeks there. Always nights or early mornings, when the building breathed differently. When memories echoed louder than footsteps. She did not talk about where she came from. When asked, she smiled politely and said she'd moved around a lot. It was true. She had moved across deserts and oceans, across lines drawn on maps and lines drawn inside her chest. She had moved away from the sound of radios crackling at midnight. From men who spoke in coordinates. From the weight of command settling into her bones like something permanent. In the break room, the television murmured news she didn't watch. Coffee burned in the pot. A young nurse complained about her schedule, about a patient who yelled. Mara listened. She always listened. Listening cost nothing and gave people the illusion of being seen. Sometimes that was enough to get them through a shift. Sometimes it was enough to get them through a life. She ate standing up, half a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. Turkey. No cheese. She chewed slowly, jaw tight, eyes unfocused. In her pocket, her phone stayed dark. It always stayed dark. She had learned a long time ago that silence was safer than connection. By mid-morning, the hospital grew louder. Doctors arrived in clean coats, administrators in pressed suits. The smell changed. Less bleach, more perfume. Mara retreated to the edges, restocking linens, checking fours. She caught her reflection once in a supply room mirror. The lines at her eyes surprised her. She did not remember earning them. She supposed no one ever did. At 10:17, the elevator doors opened on her floor and 2 men stepped out who did not belong. Their shoes were wrong. Their posture was wrong. They stood too still, like they were listening for something beneath the noise. One of them scanned the hallway the way soldiers do, eyes sharp but calm. The other held a folder close to his chest. Mara felt it before she understood it. A tightening low in her stomach. A familiar hum beneath her skin. She turned away, focused on adjusting a bed rail that did not need adjusting. She told herself it was nothing. People came to hospitals for all kinds of reasons. Fear made patterns where none existed. The men spoke to the charge nurse. Voices low. The nurse's laughter cut too high, too fast. Papers were shown. The older man nodded once. His gaze lifted, drifted. It landed on Mara. For a moment, everything went quiet inside her. The beeping monitors. The distant coughs. Even her own breath seemed to pause, waiting for instruction. She held the bed rail harder than necessary, knuckles whitening. She did not look back. She did not run. Running was a young person's mistake. Footsteps approached. Stopped a few feet behind her. "Excuse me," a man said. Polite. Controlled. "We're looking for someone." She turned slowly. Her face was neutral, kind. The face patients trusted with their pain. Can I help you? He studied her badge. Temporary. Nurse. His eyes flicked to her hands, to the scar near her thumb she never quite remembered getting. We're trying to locate Captain Hayes. The name fell between them, heavy as a dropped instrument. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor alarm chirped, then silenced. Mara did not blink. She did not correct him. She simply felt the long, careful life she had built begin to thin, like breath on glass. The man waited for her answer without impatience. That, more than the question, told her everything. He was used to doors that opened slowly, to truths that arrived when they were ready. The hallway noise crept back in around them, the world resuming as if nothing fragile were being held between two strangers. Mara inhaled. The air tasted like plastic tubing and lemon cleaner. There's no Captain Hayes here, she said gently. Not a lie. Not entirely. Her voice did not shake. It hadn't shaken in years. You might want administration. The second man stepped closer. Younger. Softer eyes. He held the folder now like something heavy. He said, and the word carried respect she hadn't earned in this building. We're not here to disrupt patient care. We just need to speak with you. Speak with you. Not arrest. Not detain. The careful language of people trained not to bruise what they touched. Mara felt something loosen a fraction, then tighten again. She nodded once. I'm on shift. The older man glanced at the charge nurse, who was watching too intently now. We can wait, he said. Or we can talk somewhere quiet. Quiet. She thought of all the quiet places she had outlived. She looked down the hall, toward room 312. Toward the orange peels folded neatly in a napkin on the bedside tray. Toward the man whose breathing had settled only minutes ago because she had stayed until it did. Leaving felt wrong. Staying felt dangerous. I'll take my break, she said. The break room was too small for the weight that followed them inside. The door clicked shut, sealing in the smell of old coffee and reheated soup. The television murmured about weather somewhere far away. No one touched it. Mara Saturday. The men remained standing, unsure whether to take the plastic chairs. That hesitation was another kindness. She noted it the way she always noted small mercies. The younger man spoke first. My name is Daniel Ruiz. This is Special Agent Warren Cole. He slid the folder onto the table, but did not open it. We've been looking for you for a long time. Mara folded her hands in her lap. The scar near her thumb pressed against her other palm. You have the wrong person. Cole watched her closely. Not with suspicion. With something like regret. We don't, he said. And we're not here to take you anywhere. The words landed softly. They did not erase the tension, but they shifted it. Mara leaned back, the chair creaking beneath her. She closed her eyes for half a second. When she opened them, the room seemed smaller. I left, she said. I was clear about that. Ruiz nodded. You were. You saved lives. You followed protocol. You disappeared. We honored that. For as long as we could. There it was. The cost. She felt it bloom behind her ribs, a familiar ache. So why now? Cole finally Saturday. He placed his hands flat on the table, palms down. Grounded. Because someone else didn't disappear, he said. And because they're asking for you. Not Captain Hayes. Just you. Mara laughed once, a short, surprised sound that startled her as much as them. They wouldn't, she said. They're gone. Ruiz's gaze dropped. He did not argue. Silence stretched, thick and careful. Outside the door, someone laughed too loudly. A cart rattled past. Life, insisting. Captain Hayes died, Mara said quietly. In a field hospital that never made the news. She died when she stopped giving orders and started holding hands instead. I filled out the paperwork myself. Cole's voice softened. You filled out paperwork a lot, he said. You always did. The familiarity cut deeper than accusation would have. Mara stood abruptly, chair legs scraping. She turned away, pressed her forehead briefly to the cool metal of the fridge. She counted her breaths again. Warm. Cold. Warm. Cold. It did not help. I am a nurse, she said into the hum of the appliance. I take vitals. I change dressings. I sit with people when they're afraid to die alone. That's all I want to be. And that's what you are, Ruiz said. That's why we found you here. She turned back. Then leave me alone. Cole opened the folder at last. Inside were no photographs, no charges. Just a single sheet of paper, folded and unfolded until the crease had worn thin. He slid it toward her without pushing. She recognized the handwriting before she read the name. The careful slant. The habit of pressing too hard on certain letters. Her breath caught. She reached for the paper with hands that suddenly remembered shaking. It came through unofficial channels, Cole said. We debated bringing it. We debated everything. Mara did not unfold it right away. She traced the crease with her thumb. If I read this, she said, I don't get to go back to not knowing. Ruiz met her eyes. No, he said. You don't. She unfolded it anyway. The room seemed to tilt as she read. A name she had buried. A place she had promised never to return to. A single line at the bottom, written smaller, as if afraid of its own hope. She sat back down slowly. The paper trembled between her fingers. He was 19, she whispered. He couldn't tie a tourniquet without help. He's 30 now, Cole said. And he remembers who taught him to breathe under fire. Mara closed her eyes. The quiet returned, heavier than before. When she opened them, the men were still there. Waiting. Not for orders. For a choice. They did not rush her. That was the strange mercy of it. They let the letter rest between her hands while the break room clock clicked forward, each second loud as a thought she could not stop having. The name on the page pulled her backward through time with a gentleness that felt undeserved. 19 years old. Too thin. Hands that shook when he smiled. She had taught him to slow his breathing by counting the spaces between heartbeats, because there were no numbers left that made sense where they were. She had told him to survive out of spite if nothing else worked. I can't leave my patients, Mara said finally. Her voice was steadier now, emptied of surprise and full of resolve. I won't. Cole nodded as if he had expected nothing else. We're not asking you to leave today. Ruiz slid a small card across the table. A number. No logo. No title. He's at a federal medical center, he said. Voluntary admission. He asked for you by name. We didn't answer. We just listened. Mara folded the letter back along its worn crease. Her hands remembered how to pack a bag in under 2 minutes, how to reduce a life to essentials. She pushed that memory away. You should go, she said. People will start asking questions. They stood. Cole hesitated, then spoke quietly. You did what you were supposed to do, he said. Then and now. She did not respond. She watched them leave, their footsteps fading into the machinery of the hospital. When the door closed, she remained seated. The clock ticked. The television weather moved on without her. After a while, she placed the letter in her pocket, close to her skin, and returned to the floor. Room 312 was darker than before. The old man slept, mouth open, breathing uneven but present. Mara adjusted the blanket, smoothed it where his shoulder jutted. She sat beside him and listened. His breath snagged, then settled. She felt the old familiar urge to stay until he woke, until he was no longer afraid. She stayed anyway. The hospital moved around her, indifferent and alive. During lunch, she checked vitals for a woman who had lost her voice after surgery. They communicated with nods and scribbled notes. Mara read the fear behind the woman's careful letters and answered it with touch, with the warm weight of a hand held longer than necessary. In the hallway, a resident asked her to cover an extra shift next week. She said yes before thinking. Habit. Service. The careful construction of a future that did not look back. At 3:27, her phone vibrated for the first time in months. A blocked number. Her heart stuttered. She did not answer. The vibration stopped. Started again. She stepped into a stairwell that smelled like dust and echoes and pressed the phone to her ear. Hello, she said. There was a pause. Then breathing. Familiar in a way that hurt. Captain, a voice said, rough and uncertain. She closed her eyes. Don't, she whispered. Not that. Another pause. Mara, he said instead, and said it like he had been carrying it in his mouth for years. I didn't think you'd come. I haven't, she said. I'm at work. I know, he said. They told me. I didn't mean to drag you back. His voice broke, quickly mended. I wanted to say thank you. Before I forget how. She leaned against the cool concrete wall. The stairwell hummed with distant life. You don't owe me anything, she said. You survived. That was the assignment. A small sound, almost a laugh. I did, he said. Most days. They talked about nothing. About the weather outside his window. About the food. About the way time bent in places designed to hold it still. She did not ask why he was there. He did not ask where she had gone. When the call ended, she remained where she was, phone warm in her hand, heart loud in her ears. That evening, the old man in 312 did not wake. His breathing slowed, then stopped while Mara held his hand and counted nothing at all. She called it gently. She closed his eyes. She stood at the foot of the bed longer than protocol allowed. When she left the room, she felt hollowed and precise. At the end of her shift, she sat in her car and did not start it. The letter pressed against her ribs. The number burned in her pocket. The hospital lights glowed behind her, a constellation she had learned to navigate without a map. She rested her forehead on the steering wheel and breathed, warm then cold, until the night settled around her like a held breath. She went back the next night. Not to the hospital she worked at, but to the other one. The federal building sat low and unremarkable against a sky that looked undecided. No sign announced its purpose. No flag flew high enough to feel proud. It smelled like rain and disinfectant and old air recycled too many times. Mara parked, waited, then stepped out of the car with nothing but her wallet and the letter folded thin as a secret. Inside, the hallways were wider, quieter. Designed for observation, not comfort. A woman at the desk checked her name, then looked up at her face with something like recognition that stopped short of curiosity. He's expecting you, she said, and handed her a badge that said visitor. Mara followed the signs alone. He sat in a chair by the window, hands folded, posture careful. Older, yes. Thicker through the shoulders. The sharpness of youth smoothed into something sturdier. He stood when he saw her, then stopped himself, unsure of the rules now. That hesitation undid her more than any embrace could have. Hi, he said. Hi, she answered. They stood there, two people with too much history compressed into a room with neutral paint and furniture designed to survive anger. Finally, she Saturday. He mirrored her. The window showed a slice of sky, grey and patient. I didn't know how to ask, he said. I didn't know if I was allowed. You're allowed, she said. To ask. To feel. He nodded, eyes on his hands. I remember things wrong, he said. Sometimes I hear radios when it's quiet. Sometimes I wake up ready to give orders no one wants. She smiled faintly. That doesn't go away, she said. You just learn when to listen and when to let it pass. He looked at her then. Really looked. What happened to you? He asked. She considered the question. The urge to summarize rose and fell. I learned how to stay, she said finally, without commanding anyone to follow. They talked for an hour, then 2, about the ordinary details that had filled the years between them, about the things that still woke him at night, about the patients she remembered long after their charts were closed. She did not tell him everything. He did not ask her to. Some stories were complete in their silence. When it was time to go, he walked her to the door. Will you come back? He asked, not pleading. Just hopeful. Yes, she said. If you want me to. I do, he said, and smiled the way he used to when he was 19 and afraid and trying to be brave. Outside, the rain had started. Mara stood under the awning for a moment, letting the sound wash over her. She felt lighter. Not healed. just less alone with what she carried. Weeks passed. She kept her job. She kept her badge. Temporary. She visited him on her days off. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in silence, listening to the building breathe. The FBI did not return. No one asked her to be anyone else. One morning, she resigned. Quietly. She trained her replacement, left notes that would make things easier. On her last shift, she sat with a woman who was afraid of dying and told her the truth. That fear could be loud, but it didn't get to decide everything. The woman squeezed her hand and slept. Mara drove west after that. Not far. Just far enough. She rented a small place with a porch and a view of nothing remarkable. She found work at a clinic where people stayed long enough to remember her name. She planted herbs in old coffee cans. She slept through the night more often than not. Sometimes, in the quiet, she still heard radios. She let them speak. She did not answer. On a cool evening, she stood on her porch and watched the sky darken. Her phone buzzed. A message. Just a photo this time. A window. A slice of sky. A caption beneath it. Still here. She typed back. Me too. She leaned on the railing and breathed. Warm. Cold. The world did not end. It did not forgive everything. It simply went on, and she went with it, carrying less weight than before, but never none at all.